Hey friend, Colin here from Sonic Scholar. Today I want to give you a jumpstart tutorial on Git. This will be primarily aimed at beginners who are working on their own projects as opposed to those who want to use it in the collaborative sense. Git is an extremely powerful, open source, totally free tool to help you effectively manage and save progress as you work on your code. You should absolutely 100% learn how to use this tool right from the start so you don't end up like me that one time in college that I pulled 2 all-nighters in a row because I broke my code beyond repair and couldn't get it back to a working state. The disclaimer, we're just going to be scratching the surface here as I need a whole series to do justice to Git. Still, what we're covering today would have saved me a lot of grief in college. In this video, we'll talk about what Git is and why you should be using it, how to initialize a Git repository with your existing code, and how to create checkpoints of your program that you can roll back to at any time. Stick around. Before we get started, I want to make sure you know about the free guide I've put together. It contains 6 topics to learn about that, if implemented from the beginning, will surely streamline your software engineering. The link is in the description. Go check it out. All right, let's get into it. What is Git? Git is an example of something called a version control system. Briefly, that's something that allows you to control different versions of your code. On the surface, you might ask, why do I want multiple versions of my code? I'm just trying to write one application. Well, if you think about the process of writing an application, you could think of the various states of progress. Just started, to I just got this function working, to fix this bug, to done. Each one of these stages represents versions of your code as it came to completion. Git lets you easily roll back, branch, and transition to and from these states with incredible ease. You should be using this tool right from the beginning for so many reasons. Here's 3. 1, it's an industry standard tool that most jobs use and require knowledge of anyway. Next, as a beginner, you're liable to make a lot more and more severe mistakes as you're learning, and Git will help you get out of trouble quickly when you need to press that panic button and get back to safety. 3, the Git magic sauce is already built into virtually all popular code editors and IDEs, so learning it will serve you well no matter what tools or languages you're writing code in. Getting started with Git. As mentioned in the intro, we're just going to scratch the surface, so today we're just going to look at Git from the command line. By the way, if you feel like command line is painful or intimidating to you, let me know in the comments. I'd love to know how to help. Getting comfortable with the command line is super important, and it's one of the topics that I covered in the guide I mentioned earlier, so go grab it. Start off by going to the Git website. That's git-scm.org/downloads. I'll provide the link in the description. Or you can just Google Git, G-I-T, and install it. Make sure you select the option to add Git to your path variable, otherwise it won't work from the command line. Also, make sure to not use Vim as your default editor. Unless you're one of those Vim people and you know who you are. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, you're not one of those people. Set it to something more friendly like Notepad++ or Visual Studio Code or whatever you have installed. Once you have it installed, the first thing to do is to create or initialize your repository. Now, the repository is just an internal database that's going to store all your source code and all of the incremental changes to it. We're going to start out with an empty repository, and I'm just going to use plain old text files for this example so we don't get bogged down in the details too much. So I'll open a command prompt in the directory that I want my repository to be in, the one that contains all my code. On Windows, I like to do that by holding Shift and then right-clicking somewhere in the directory and selecting the option to either open a command prompt or PowerShell window here. I type git init and hit enter, and just like that, I have an empty repository. Now there's a .git directory in this folder. Depending on your OS, you may have to turn on an option to view hidden files and folders. This directory is where the entire repository is stored, so don't delete it or mess around in there. or you're liable to break something. Here we'll look at some basic use cases with Git. For these, we'll just look at a couple examples using plain old text files so that you get the idea at a high level. Now in my folder structure, I'm just going to add a new text file. I'll call it file1.txt. And then if I go to my command prompt and type git status, we'll notice a couple things. The first thing is it sees that there's a text file there. The second thing is that it's under this category called untracked files, and you can add the files using this command here. Essentially, two things need to happen for us to save our changes, right? We've just created this brand new file and we want to save it into our repository. The first thing is we need to add it to the staging area, and then the second thing is to commit it. There are a couple ways to add a file. I'll show you the first way is you can use just like the command says up here, git add, and then the file. So that's file1.txt. I'm using the tab key to autocomplete. I hit enter and it's added to the staging area. I can tell it's there because when I go and hit git status, now instead of being under untracked files, it's under changes to be committed. There's still no commits yet, but it does see that there is a new file, right? So this is a brand new file that we just created, not like a modification or deletion. So I'm going to go ahead and undo this so that I can show you the other way that you can add files. So I'm going to use a special kind of dangerous command here. So now I'm back to where I started, where the file is created, but it's not yet added to the staging area. So instead of adding it by the explicit file name, you can use git add dot. And the dot means a shortcut, basically means everything in the current directory. So the danger here is that you could inadvertently add files that you are not intending to. Say in the process of compiling your program, it generates a couple files that you don't really want added to the repository. This has the potential to add them. You can get around that with a .gitignore file, which we can cover in another video. There I hit git add dot and check the status with git status, and I see that my new file is staged for commit. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to commit it. So we'll do git commit, and then we pass a parameter -m followed by a message surrounded in double quotes. And this is essentially talking about what it is that your changes incorporate. So for this message, I'm just going to say added a new blank file and hit enter. It said the commit was successful. I have a little shorthand git ID of that commit and some summaries of everything that happened. So it said 1 file changed, 0 insertions or deletions. If I check the git log, I can see that I have my commit. Notice this is the longer version of that git ID. This is just showing the short version. Essentially just a random unique identifier. It's not random, but it's unlikely to be the same as any other commit. I have the author as well as the author's email, and then the date and time that the commit happened, as well as the message here. So now let's say I'm working on my program and I'm making progress. I'm going to make some changes. So here's my file one. I'm just going to add some stuff into the text file and close it out. Now if I go back here and say git status, we can see that there are changes in that file. So it noticed that, hey, the contents of this file is different than it used to be, and they're not staged for commit. So again, 2-step process, got to add it to the staging area and then commit it. So I'll just do git add dot again. It's my shorthand. Check the status. We see it's in the staging area. And then again, we'll do a commit. This time I'll have my message say, added some text to file1.txt. And now this time, instead of having 0 insertions and 0 deletions, we could see there was 1 insertion into that file. Clear the screen out and check the log, and we could see that there are both commits in the history. Awesome. Again, checking the status. after a commit saying that the working tree is totally clean. Okay, this is great. We've basically made it so that we can save incremental progress in our repository. But one of the things I mentioned earlier is that it's really handy to be able to roll back. So let's say we're working in some code here and making some changes in here, and we do something that's so bad we just want to roll it back. So we'll say something really bad, right? Now to get back to a totally clean working state, you can undo all the changes for anything you haven't committed yet. Do a git reset with the -- hard option. That's going to make everything go back to how it was as of the last commit. So after running that, now it says the head is at this commit ID in this message. Added some text to file 1.txt. If I check the git log, you can see here's that commit ID. If I open up the text, that really bad stuff is now gone. So that's nice. Now, what about the case where I was working on stuff and I added something really bad, and what if I had committed it? Okay, so I'll just say git add, git commit, and added something bad. How do I undo this? So what you can do is use the reset command. We can use it without this -- hard option, and it will save the changes as unstaged. Here's the state of my repository. I'm currently at this something bad commit, but I want to restore back to this particular ID. I'm just going to grab a couple of these characters, copy them into my paste buffer, and then I will say git reset and paste that git ID. And now it's going to bring me back to that point. So if I type git log again, it undid the bad change, and now I'm at the part where I made some text changes to file 1.txt. However, what it did by default, the git reset command did not hard delete everything. So if I look at git status, it says I actually have some changes. And again, I have the really bad text there. So by not using the -- hard, it kept that text there. So if there was anything that I really wanted, it's still there as an unstaged. This is basically where we were in the example just before this. So I just did another git reset hard, which should get rid of all of the bad stuff. But let's say maybe I did that on a mistake. Now I feel like I'm kind of hosed because I just reset all the stuff that was in the future. And if I go look at the history, I don't have that bad commit anymore. But let's say if I wanted to get back there, Git actually has this really powerful tool called the ref log that lets you undo your undos, which is pretty awesome. So if I look at the git ref log command, it actually has commit IDs for every single change, including the resets. And as long as you haven't deleted this git folder, it's tracking all that stuff for you. So you can, again, just get out of any pickle you need to. To get back there, all I'm going to do is just use the git reset command, just like we did before, but we have these special commit IDs. And so here's where I wanted to get to, this commit where I added something bad. Let's say I want to get back there. I'm going to right click, copy it into my paste buffer, say git reset, hit enter. And now if I look at the git log, look, my commit is back. So again, super powerful. There's so much more than I can get into in today's video, but I'm just a strong encouragement to get into Git, pun intended. The bottom line being is in everything you do, it's tracked in the Git repo so that you are always safe. There you have it, a very basic crash course on Git. We talked about what it is, why you should use it, and a few basic concepts with the command line. I mentioned before that Git is integrated with all the popular code editors out there, and there are standalone GUI applications that take away the need for command line. Let me know if you'd like a tutorial on these as well. I hope you feel like managing the progress from start to completion of your app is more doable, and that you're excited to incorporate Git into your development workflow if you're not doing so already. As a thank you for watching, I want you to have my 6 tips for excellent software guide. Remember, this is a free guide that I've put together with 6 things I wish someone had explicitly called out for me all those years ago. Go to www.sonicscholar.com/6tips or click the link in the description and grab your free copy. Now in the comments, tell me what's one thing we talked about today that will make your life easier. Also let me know if you have any pain points with Git, and if you're not using Git, what have you been using instead to manage the state of your code? That's all for now, friend. Hit the like and subscribe buttons if you find content like this helpful, and I'll see you in another video soon.